First, let me take the last one because it's also related to the third question about the beneficiaries of economic growth. Simply put, in my view, the most important investment economically as well as socially that a country can make is in its children's health and education by far. So if you want to achieve economic development, especially in our advanced scientific age, all children need quality schooling, need to be able to do math, science, reading, and so forth. And of course, that also requires a proper healthy upbringing, an end of stunting, proper nutrition, a proper vaccine coverage, and other health service coverage. This is the most important investment quantitatively for economic growth, by the way. Much more important than any physical investment. And that's not speaking moralistically, that's speaking very practically. That's speaking on the evidence base of what are the factors, inputs to economic growth. Schooling is crucial, and quality schooling, the evidence shows, is more important than sitting in a classroom. It's what is being learned in the classroom. And there's now a very large research output around the world about quality education. Now, India's educational system is definitely not up to where it needs to be. This is without question. And even the average years of schooling is still very low in this country compared to what you're aspiring to. This is not an insurmountable obstacle. This isn't even hard, by the way. This is some basic public investment that's needed. And to understand this is not to do good. I promise you, it's not about doing good. It's about economic success. So if you want economic success, take a look at the PISA scores. That's the program on international student achievement. India dropped out of them in 2007 because it came in second from the bottom. It was an embarrassment. It left them. It was going to come back, and then COVID intervened in the interim. Please rejoin PISA wherever you score, and then get near the top of the list in the next 20 years. It's obvious that this can be done. By the way, everyone here knows the most basic fact that of every single ethnic group in the United States, the one that is best educated and highest professional is India, are the Indian Americans. So come on, this is not even hard for you guys. But currently, the average years of schooling is about 7 years. Now that averages across cohorts. But in the United States, it's 14 years. And that's your job. Get the schooling up. And by the way, get schools built, get teachers trained, and get schools online. Because if a school's online, it can have a quality teacher no matter where it is, period. Connected classrooms online. So that also has a nice effect. It empowers everybody. It is the most equalizing investment there is in the world, by far as well. It was my whole point about convergence internationally, which was it was finally the ability of India to invest in its own citizens or China to invest in its own citizens that enabled convergence. So this is true within the country also. But it's also fundamental from an economic strategy point of view. So please do that because it's not hard. And use your online prowess to improve the quality of education, because this is really a technological breakthrough for education. Every child can have an AI agent avatar as a tutor, as helping the students, as having someone to chat with for their homework in the evening, online. Somebody sent me their niece talking to Albert Einstein for their math homework assignment in 4th grade, because they made an avatar of Albert Einstein and he answers all the questions very nicely. And he can do 4th grade math. And so you can have tutors now for free. It's an online system. So this is really, I think, a very, very high priority. And yes, will all 0.5 billion people experience the growth? If they're educated, they will. They'll be able to find their place. If population size dictates power, why did small countries achieve dominance? And you can go back not even to countries, to Venice or Genoa or individual city-states at times. Of course, those city-states, even though in our history we say they dominated a small part of the world. They didn't dominate India, they didn't dominate China, they didn't dominate Asia at the time. But what makes dominance possible is technological superiority, because that translates also into military superiority. What made Britain be the hegemon of the world in the 19th century essentially was the steam engine, plus the social organization, plus the mentality that they wanted to beat up everybody. But it was basically the steam engine that made it possible. But it was not a lasting dominance. And this is why today, what's amazing, I said culturally, Britain is as imperialistic as ever, by the way. They're telling everyone, go defeat Russia. We're going to defeat Russia. We're going to do all these things. Of course, they have nothing to add other than their cheerleading. But the mentality remains, but the reality isn't there at all. Fortunately, in my opinion. But the point is, it was a temporary advantage which diffuses. And if you can prevent the diffusion, then you can postpone the decline. The United States, I'll say, in this regard, is 4.1% of the world population. So the question is, what can you really get out of 4.1% of the world population for the long term? I don't think continued economic dominance. I would say the US dominance came from the following elements. First, of course, continental scale. That's not going away. The United States will not be defeated. It will remain a continental scale. That already puts you in the top 10, let's say, pretty guaranteed. 2 big oceans, continental scale. Second is that when the European powers defeated themselves between 1914 and 1945, the United States was the only one that remained standing. So the situation in 1945 was absolutely extraordinary. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, when I grew up, when I was born, was a powerhouse of technology because it had built the airplanes and the fighter jets and everything else for World War II, and the tanks and so forth. But this is, again, a faded dominance. That dominance does no longer applies, which is, by the way, why Russia is not defeated militarily in Ukraine. The United States threw a lot of its technology at Russia in the last 3 years, but it did not defeat Russia, not even close. In the end, the numbers of troops turned out to dominate still, even in this very capital-intensive age of warfare that we have. But still, the United States doesn't dominate Russia in military capacity to actually fight a war, for example. And if the U.S. were to get into a war with China in the South China Sea, it would get completely defeated, no doubt. So this, I just think we need, I want to keep perspective on that. The U.S. is a very sophisticated financial market, lots of depth to it, probably asset prices way overvalued at this point because the price earnings ratios of the New York or the U.S. stock markets are out of sight. But I agree with Professor Nair that the U.S. remains a powerful country. I don't think it will be the dominant country in any meaningful sense, not militarily. China will. I should just add one more basic point. Two more basic points. India should invest in its military. I'm a pacifist, but India should invest in a strong domestic military industry so that it's not dependent on the US or China or Russia for its security. That, I think, is point one. Point two is you get a lot of technological advance from those investments that spill over to every place. So the reason why the US, Britain, Russia, China are so technologically sophisticated, but you could add in Israel, Korea, and others, is the heavy military investments. I hate the wars. I think it's incredibly crazy. But I would not put a country of 1.5 billion people at the dependence of someone else's technology. I wouldn't. India's big enough to have its own arms industry and to invest in its own technology for this. The reason I say this is that you watch the behavior of the major powers. If India depends on its military security for the US or on Russia or on China, good luck. Don't. So it's, yeah, Sonia's very unhappy with that. I don't want you to waste a lot of money on it, but I also don't want India, I want India to be a great power independently and not to be dependent on others, because as the biggest population in the world, it makes sense, you can afford it, and you don't have to feed our arms industry. That's the point. They want to sell you lots of weapons. I don't think you need to buy the weapons there. I think you should develop your own technologies and be secure. And it comes to this question of space as well. I will leave Elon Musk to go to Mars if he wants. He should spend his own money to do it, as far as I'm concerned. But space capacity is a part of economic and military security for a country. Because if you are dependent on geolocation by someone else's satellites, they will cut you off the first day of a war. And so you need your own low Earth orbital satellites, you need your own connectivity, you cannot depend on Elon Musk for Starlink, and so forth. And this requires a space industry. And again, my theory is India is big enough to have all industries here. We're not talking about, we were last week in Barbados, it's 260,000 people. They can't have a space industry. But you can have a space industry, and I would do it. Now, don't do it at the expense of your children. Don't say we can't afford, we need space, so we can't afford education. It's nothing like that quantitatively. And also, don't spend 5% of your GDP on the military. I don't know what it is right now, probably around that. Too much, because you are safe, you're not going to be invaded, you're not going to invade anyone else, and so you don't need it. But when you do spend it on your own technology and industry, I would say, more than on buying NATO equipment or being part of some illusory Quad or some anti-China program and so on. If you remain anti-China, you will not become the sixth member of the Security Council. And I really want you to be. And that means being friendly with your borderland. They're not your neighbor exactly, but they are on the other side of the border in the high Himalayas. And I think that it would be good to have a normal relationship with them. Okay, education and health I've talked about. I think I got all of them. Okay, thank you for the questions.
It is not that we have run out of questions. I think we've run out of time. I have 4 in the basket here. There are another 4 or 8 that await. But the hosts want me to bring this to an end in the next 6-7 minutes. So let me just put 2 questions to you, Professor Sachs, because I think the audience here is interested in the idea of India in 2047. Can it become a developed country? Okay. 2 questions. One in arithmetic, one in history. Yeah. You know, in 2023, at 23 prices and exchange rates, India's GNI per capita was $2,540, right? We are lower middle income country, right? If we were to become a high income country in 2047, we would need to reach a per capita income level of $14,000, a little above that. Russia is bottom of that high income. For that to happen, India's per capita income would have to grow at 7.4, 7.5% per annum for the next 25 years. Is that feasible? 2, and they are questions together. They are a reality check on an aspiration. It's a desirable aspiration. Yes. Is it possible? Is it feasible? That's my question. Now, if we look at a history of the world economy since 1950, there are only 3 countries, all Asian, that have made the transition from being low-income countries to becoming high-income countries. And those are Taiwan, Singapore, and South Korea, in that order, between the late 70s and early 90s. Now, if we look at China, beginning 1949, as a low-income country, it became a sort of lower middle-income country in 2007. Yeah, and it became an upper middle-income country from low income, and then it will become a high-income country at the end of 25 if all goes well.
Yep.
So China, a country with the fastest growth in human history over the past 30 years, would have taken 76 years to get to high-income status. India, beginning life in 1947, okay, took 60 years to move from low income to lower middle income, 2007. And if all goes well, India will get to being an upper middle income country in 2032, but it could also be 36. Depends on whether it grows at 7.5% or at 5% that has grown in the last. So India would take something like 85 or 89 years to get from low income to upper middle income. Yeah? We are aspiring for a high income status in 2047. The question is it feasible? Yeah. We don't have time for a long answer, but do you think my question 1 is Yes or no?
It's feasible. And I think there are a few things to say, just a few words about the timing arguments. There was a lot of lost time for India and a lot of lost time for China. So the actual pace is higher than it looks, taking the whole durée from 1947 or from 1949. China didn't really get started in crucial ways until 1978, and then especially 1980. India lost a lot of time with the license Raj for a long time, and it was really only in the early 1990s onward that many powerful forces, in my view, started to accumulate. That's first point. Second point is we are in a very strong technological age right now. So there's lots of leapfrogging that can be done. I'm a big believer in the digital power, in digital technologies for across the board. So I think what can be done now is extraordinary. It's possible to reach the whole country if there was the desire for it within 2 years. Just like every village became electrified, every school could be online, every child could have a device, every curriculum could be upgraded if there's the desire to do it. And you have the engineers to do that as well, and all the capacity internally to do that. So I think that the headroom is enormous for fast growth. Third, there is something to look at, which I would look at together with you, and I don't have a magic answer. But if you look at the per capita income at $2,500 right now at market prices, and you go back to what you don't like, but I do like, purchasing power parity, it's roughly 4 times that. And what does that mean? It means that there is likely to be a narrowing of the gap between the dollar income and the PPP income over the next 25 years. And what does that mean? Technically, it means a real appreciation. The price level here is going to rise. The price level of services is going to rise. And what that means is that you don't have to get from 2,500 to 14,000 in volume terms, because a lot of that's going to happen in price terms, actually. So when we look at how fast the real quantity growth has to be, it's less than the number you quoted of the 7.5% compound per capita growth in real terms at constant prices for market prices. Yes, I'm sorry?
At constant 20%.
Exactly, at constant market prices. So the point is that I think technically this is not an outlandish proposition to reach that income level, both because of the capacity to do it in terms of identifiable pathways, but also because of what's really implied in the split between quantity increase and price increase. But I have to check that. I don't want to be glib about that point.
But by the way, we are both economists. We are not in the business of astrology.
Yes.
The world is full of uncertainties. I think the aspiration is both desirable and plausible. But whether it is probable, whether it'll happen, is something that remains uncertain. Now, you've already highlighted the importance of industrial policy, industrial strategy, of investing in development of technology, in reaching this goal. But it seems to me, as a citizen of India, that there are 2 things which are critical in reaching this aspiration. First is that we must create equal economic and social opportunities for our people, irrespective of caste, religion, gender. Yeah? We have not done so yet. Second, I think we need to make a provision, a public provision for education and healthcare for our people. The real difference between the leaders and the laggards in Asia was precisely these two.
I agree.
Yeah? And this is where I think if we are able to do that, we could get there. If we don't do it, we won't get there.
I couldn't agree more, and I want to underscore that this is the most important investment. The idea, by the way, of the Sustainable Development Goals, and especially SDG 4, which is quality education for all, is that it is for all. And so gender, ethnicity, race, religion, it's not there. It's for all. And so it's very basic, very important. I want to add one more thing. Again, find a solution with your neighbors. This will be a direct economic benefit that's quite powerful. The fact that India and Pakistan don't trade with each other, don't even have bus service between the two was last time I checked, although I don't know whether that's literally still the case. This is such a loss of economic opportunity, gains from trade, mutual benefit. I don't want to oversimplify. I just want to say, as an economist, there's a big prize out there to solving that problem. That's not a costless problem. That's not just something, oh, that's fine. We don't like it or we don't care. That's an economic problem. And I'll say another point, again, I'm going to re-emphasize it again, I have to, with apologies, with China. One place we were in India said, bring your investments, just no Chinese companies. Come on. Bring technology, capital, business, jobs. You'll get huge benefits from this. Nothing's going to happen bad, I promise. If something happens bad, call me, okay? Nothing bad is going to happen. So this is another avenue for another 0.5 percentage point of GDP. You add up these few things around, you can really do quite well. You're already at 6% growth. Just collect a few of these and you're at 8% growth. And then we answer Professor Nayer's question.